following announcement has been paid for by the new Howl Order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So I had a chance to read a pretty good article. It's about a good 12 to 15-minute read. Jeremy Fowler combined with John Keim to compose a lengthy article kind of outlining how we got here to this point at 4-9. Del Rio fired and the end seeming very near and imminent for Ronald Rivera. And it kind of picked up like the happenings of the season at the week 8 loss to the Eagles. That was sort of the crossroads. And there have been two like big crossroad games, if you will, this season, for me at least. The most deflating game was the Bears one. That's when you probably realized this season isn't going to go the way that we want it to. Because you can't lose to teams like the Bears and expect to have something be made of your season that's tangible and fruitful. You can't lose at home in blowout fashion to a team who hadn't won a game in almost a full calendar year and who at the time was the worst team in football. They hadn't won a game, them in Carolina. And you lost by 20 at that. Like, it wasn't even close. I mean, it got close. It got tight for a second, but we were never within striking distance. But the first crossroads was that week 8 game against the Eagles, the second Eagles game, but the first crossroads game for me, because we had a chance to get back to 500 at 4-4 on the season. But more importantly, that game pretty much was going to determine where we sellers at the trade deadline or where we're going to stand pat and try to make a run at the playoffs. A win over Philadelphia would have given this organization and the coaching staff and ownership reason to move forward with the team constructed as is. I think they would have moved Chase Young regardless, but they would have held on to Montez Sweat, I believe. Maybe they hold on to both of them. And the article pretty much stated that, and I've told you guys this for the last year strong, they weren't fond of Chase Young. Jack Del Rio didn't even hide it. He could care less about Chase Young. You know, Ronald was all about trying to salvage that relationship. But they were frustrated with Chase Young at the end of 2022. They were really upset at how he handled that whole situation. And they were already frustrated with his lack of attention to detail, his freelancing, his disregard for the scheme and his role in it. So there was already a bit of frustration with him from that. And then the whole injury situation and him, you know, coming back at his leisurely pace was something that really bothered them, or at least the way they perceived him, coming back at his own leisurely pace when he was cleared by, medically by the doctors that had performed the surgery. The team doctors had cleared him, and it was really on him. But the article said that Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera didn't want to trade Montez Sweat. But essentially, Eugene Shin told owner Josh Harris, bro, this second-round pick that they're offering, and it's not just the regular second-round pick, like the Bears stink. This is going to be like the 3rd, 4th, or 5th pick of the second round. Like, can you really afford to pass that up for a guy that you're not sure if you're going to sign a long-term deal to this offseason? He's going to get big money. Are you going to be the one to pay it to him? If not, you're not going to get a better opportunity to move him, and you're not going to get a better deal. And it was at that point where Josh Harris, he didn't demand the trade. He just voiced his opinion on what he think should take place. And as the article stated, at times when you hear from an owner and the owner makes a suggestion or he voices his opinion, are you in a position to disregard that opinion, right? Especially when you're fighting for your job. So Harris making the suggestion that, hey, maybe we should trade both of them. Was Del Rio and Rivera in particular going to say no? Nah. But remember, Jack pretty much made it abundantly clear, I didn't trade those guys. Because he knew, and Rivera knew that to a lesser degree. And we talked about this already. Trading those guys signaled the end for them. Yeah, the defense sucked with those two in tow, but you weren't getting better by moving on from them. And there were delusional fans out there that actually thought this defense was going to be better addition by subtraction. Like, what? That was the same 2021 crowd that thought the defense got better because those two weren't in it. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And I had already explained to you that the defense started to turn around in that Green Bay game when they were both still healthy. They played really well the following week in a loss at Denver. And then Montez had his jaw broken in that game. And then Chase, after the bye week, had the knee injury, and they were both gone for the rest of the season, right? So the defense had already started to play better. And they just kind of kept that going, even with those two out of the lineup. And it didn't hurt that the level of competition we were playing wasn't very good. The Seahawks weren't good that year. The Raiders weren't good that year. And the Panthers weren't any good that year. So the level of competition that we were playing also helped bolster that run that we were on. We were scoring 17 points every week, except for the Carolina game. And we were having to make that enough. So they knew that trading Montez Sweat and Chase Young pretty much signaled the end of the road for them. They weren't going to get better defensively. They didn't expect, I don't think, to get as worse as they did and have the bottom literally fall out of the defensive. Because I think at that time we were like 29th or 30th in points per game, and I think we were like 27th in yards. We're now 29th in yards, and we're dead last in points given up per game. So it's gotten worse. And we've only gotten 7 sacks the last 4 games combined. And again, we all knew that this was going to be the case. I told you that first game without them was the New England game, if I'm not mistaken. And we barely got to Mac Jones. It just, I was like, yeah, this is and everybody tried to, brush, it's a quick pass game. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's not what that was. We're not getting to the quarterback. And the other crossroads game was the Seahawks game. That's where it felt like that was the last stand. That's the last time we saw this team play with heart, grit, and determination for 4 quarters. Okay, that's the last game we've seen that. We've seen them fight for 3 quarters. They did it against Dallas. We saw them fight for all of maybe 6 minutes against the Dolphins. Maybe the first 6 minutes or so of the game, they put up a bit of a fight before they waved the white flag there. But that was it. That Seahawks game was your last opportunity to get to 500. It was your last chance to put together that signature Rivera win streak that we were holding out hope was coming at some point. And it was the last stand that this team had. It was the last ounce of energy they had to give. They're spent at this point. It's over. And so the article talks about all of the different changes that has taken place. And one of the things it focused on was Bieniemy coming on board and how much of a role. One of the things I don't think I really thought a lot about until here recently, maybe the last 2 weeks or so. I don't know who I heard mention this first, but someone had mentioned the amount of power. I think it was John Kahn personally, but I'm not sure. But someone had mentioned the amount of power that Eric Bieniemy has within the organization. And you know what it was? I remember now. I remember when I heard it for the first time, and it it struck me as sort of odd. And I brought it up to you guys. John Keim said it in passing. He didn't even like make it a big deal, but he said it in passing, and it was something to the effect of Ron Rivera needs to remind the players who's in charge. I'm like, why would John? Why would he need to do that? Don't they know he's in charge? And that's when I started to dig and started probing, and that's when I learned that Eric Bieniemy's pretty much running this thing. Like Ron's almost like an assistant coach at times, because EB literally came in, and we know about how much control he had over camp and the practice schedule. But he also was setting the schedule for the day. It wasn't just practice. He was setting meeting times, and he was controlling the practices, the pace of the practice, the length of the practice, how the practice was going to be executed. The article, lays out that he was controlling the meetings, and the meetings were running into an issue with the players having time for treatment. And the players were sort of pushing back a bit. And so he compromised by allowing them to have like the little rolly mats that you use to help, with, muscle relaxation and pushing out any tightness in your calf or your quads or anything like that. And I'm like, that's a compromise? I guess. So it talked about him, pushing the coaches maybe past their limits, because they come in really early, and they, in the article, it says that there would be a lot of nights where the offensive staff wouldn't leave the park until after midnight. So he was putting a lot on the plate of these coaches, and he was really demanding a lot of them and the players. And the players were okay with it. And I've always made this abundantly clear. The players were okay with a lot of this when they saw a path to success doing it in that manner. It's when they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel that they start to become frustrated. Another thing that the article laid out was, in previous years, the players would have Tuesday off, right? And they would come in on Mondays. And obviously the players preferred it that way, to come in, the Monday after a game, not have to worry about Tuesday, kind of get that refresher, that break there, and then come in for the work week on Wednesday. Well, EB essentially gave them Monday off after the game. He switched it up and took Tuesday away from them and made that a work day. And the players really weren't fond of that, because think about it in this light. Would you rather have Monday off? You worked Sunday, so it's not that big of a deal to just come back and work again on Monday, right? You worked on Sunday. So would you rather have Monday off and then have to go back to work Tuesday and just don't have another day off until Monday again? Or would you rather just work all the way through and then have Tuesday off to break up the monotonous energy of working, and then come back and get after it on Wednesday, which is what I would prefer. And that's what the players preferred. But EB came in and switched it up and essentially had them working Tuesday through Sunday. And the players preferred to work, because Monday, when you're coming in after a game, you're really just coming in, watching film, and getting treatment. So it's not really like a super laborious work day. But if you get Monday off, they're expecting you to take care of your body that day. And then Tuesday, when you come in, it's like a real work day. You're watching film, you're getting treatment, but we're also expecting you to come in here and have meetings and things of that nature. It's a little bit different. So anyway, the players didn't like it, so, to say the least. But I think that it just went to show you how much control Eric Bieniemy had this season. And I didn't realize just how much control he literally had in the building. Like literally, he was running the show. It's almost as if this was an internship and Ron kind of just stepped back and said, hey, I'm going to see how you do, man. Go ahead, run it. I'll just be back here monitoring everything. And if you need me, I'm here, but this is your show. Go ahead and let's see how you do. Almost as if he was already the, interim head coach, right? Like that's kind of how this thing was going. And so it kind of outlined that. It talked about the players sort of being frustrated with some of the things that, have gone on. There's a little piece in the article that talks about Terry McLaurin sitting down with Eric Bennett. You know what also struck me too, and I didn't think about this? The first Giants game, Terry was very vocal about how long it took us to adjust to what the Giants, so almost being critical of Eric Bieniemy, which he should have been. That was his worst game as a coordinator here this year. I don't think anybody would argue that. We scored 7 points against a Giants football team that at the time, similar to the Bears when we lost to them, was one of the worst teams in football. Like you should have been embarrassed losing. And I was. That was the game that did it for me, that showed me this. It's over. This Rivera thing is over. We suck, and we're not going to amount to anything this year. And Eric Bieniemy lied to me. That was the game where I realized all of those things all at once. It was a tough 48 hours for me. I'm not going to lie. And Terry making that statement publicly, I wonder if that rubbed Eric Bieniemy the wrong way. I'm not one of these conspiracy theorists that thinks that there's a beef between the two of them. I don't think Terry's, particularly happy with the way things have gone this year. I don't think he loves this scheme and how things have gone. But I don't think there's a real beef. But if there were, maybe that's where it started. Because Terry was very critical of the fact that they didn't do the things that would have lended itself to beating the blitz like they started to do at the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter when they started to really generate some offense. Anyway, they also highlighted the whole firing of Jack Del Rio and how it came about. And that whole situation, how they phrased it in the article, if it actually played out that way, shame on Ronald Rivera for how he came to the point of wanting to fight. And it felt in the moment when it happened, it felt rushed. It felt like scapegoating. It felt like they needed to have a sacrificial lamb for the fans, because after getting a drubbing like that and having turkey legs eaten on you and D-Wade, LeBron alley-oops thrown into the Salvation Army bell, something had to be done. And so they made it seem like it'd be one thing in the article made it seem like this was an issue that Rivera saw back in week 5 versus the Bears. And it kind of was festering, and then it came to a head in week 12 on Thanksgiving against Dallas. Then, okay, I can look. Literally, they made it seem like they're on the flight back from Dallas. He's watching the film, and it was this crucial moment in the game. And we all know what it was. We cut the lead to 14-10, or the deficit rather, to 14-10. And we get the ball to start the second half. So if we can find, maybe Dallas got the ball to start the second half. But you felt like if you could get a stop, hell, before the half, because Dallas was aggressive, you might get the ball back, and who knows, and we still had like 2 timeouts. You might be able to get another field goal, or hell, even worse, or better for us, worse for them, a touchdown. Take the lead on their ass, right? Because we really dominated the first half in terms of time of possession and controlling the football. The problem was we didn't have anything to show for it. And when they had it, they didn't waste time. They just scored touchdowns quick. So it didn't matter that the time of possession was slantedly in our favor, because at the end of the day, they were scoring touchdowns and we weren't. But it's 14-10. We were right there. We just put together a beautiful drive, got in the end zone, and it felt like bing, bang, boom, and the Cowboys were in the end zone. And it was at that moment that Rivera looked and said, and remember his comments after halftime. Normally, this is the guy, you're getting beat 27-3 against the Bears. You're shut out against the Giants 14-0 at half. And this is the guy that has nothing to say. He's got nothing. I didn't talk to the players at halftime. They got to figure it out themselves. Now, all of a sudden, he's pissed. Oh, we got to play tighter on these receivers. We got to be more aggressive. I'm like, where's this coming from? And the article made it seem like the Cowboys game was just too much to bear and he had to do something. And I'm just like, that's not good enough for me. I mean, not that it matters at this point, right? But the article also made it seem like the players were starting not to believe. Some of the mantras that Ron was using, there was this like 3-word mantra that he was using that he stopped using because it wasn't resonating with the players anymore. He was trying all kinds of things. He showed them film from early in the season when their practice habits were better and they were having success. And the players just got to a point where his message simply wasn't getting through anymore. They even went so far as to chronicle and outline how Rivera fired Jack Del Rio and Brent Wieselmeyer. Going to Jack's room, having a respectable, conversation, but also, Jack was not thrilled with the news. Why would he be? He was getting fired. And then Ron, left his office, walked down the hall, went to Brent Wieselmeyer's office and said, "Hey, Wies, we got to let you go." And that was that. So it chronicled those two guys being let go. And they talked about the defense, Jack Del Rio's defense. And you know what's crazy? As a fan, we feel like what we're watching is pretty simple. Like, we don't blitz a lot. We don't do anything complex. So when you hear that Jack's defense is kind of hard to digest, that's a struggle for a lot of us because we're looking around and we're saying it is. Because what we're seeing looks like basic coverage. We're not doing anything exotic, but his defense is better suited for veteran players, which is why maybe last year the defense was better. One of the things that I've noticed this year in particular is that the communication hasn't been great defensively. You don't see guys talking. You don't see guys making sure everyone's lined up correctly. You don't see a lot of the chatter that you see with the good defenses. The communication, hey, somebody goes in motion and you get the safety coming down and talking to the other safety, and then he yells something to the corner, or you see the linebacker doing this to everybody, making sure he's telling this guy, and then he goes down, slaps the defensive lineman over, get him out of that gap, get him into the right gap. You don't see a lot of that going on this year. Last year, there was a lot of talking. There was a lot of communication. There was a lot of pointing, a lot of guys making sure they're on the same page. You're not seeing that. And then you're seeing a lot of defensive breakdowns. And you're also seeing a lot of young guys getting opportunities like Percy Butler and Emmanuel Forbes. And you're seeing a lot of guys moving around in different spots, not being comfortable and, thinking you got help here. You don't have help. That's what we saw on Sunday, right? Kendall Fuller literally is playing outside technique where he's funneling Tyreek Hill inside to where he thinks there's a safety there waiting to help him, but there wasn't. And so he's funneling Tyreek Hill essentially to no one, and he runs by Kendall Fuller and catches the ball and runs into the end zone. And there just hasn't been the accountability nor the communication that we've been accustomed to seeing. And so, one of the things the article pointed out is that, this year we've seen a lot of younger guys getting opportunities, new guys in the scheme, i.e., the linebacker. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. They came from Seattle. Percival Butler has been in quite a bit since the injury to Defoe. And, Emmanuel Forbes is a rookie. Quan Martin has just started to get a lot of snaps, and so forth and so forth. A lot of younger guys on that back end of the defense. And it's been problematic for Washington, clearly. So they talked about that. And then they kind of talked about how Bieniemy is being viewed. And Rivera pretty much, for lack of a better term, risking his future as the head coach here on two things: Sam Howell as his starting quarterback, and Eric Bieniemy, as his offensive coordinator, which we all knew that those were going to be two of the bigger, things to determine what this season was going to be. And although it hasn't been consistent through 13 games, we felt like with better defensive performances, we would not be sitting here at 4-9. I think anybody who's watched this team for any amount of time this year would come to that conclusion, that you probably don't lose to Philadelphia twice, maybe once. But, I mean, even just a mid defensive performance in either one of those games, scoring 31 twice, you're probably bound to win one of those games, if not both of them. The Seattle game, if the defense plays better, you probably win that game, right? So you feel like there's a number of those, games mixed in where if you got more out of your defense, and you can say the same for the offense, and that's, part of the problem. If the offense played better against the Giants in the first game, if the offense played better I know the Giants and Tommy DeVito rolled up some yards and scored some points, but even with that, if the offense played better, like they turned it over 6 times, like who are you beating doing that? If the offense played better in those 2 Giants games in particular, you probably win both of them. If not one, both definitely won. And so the season could be drastically different if, both sides of the ball were better and played more consistent throughout the season. Or maybe they were too consistent, specifically the defense. They've been consistent pretty much all year in terms of just being bad. But that's nor here nor there. Like I said, it was a good article. And then the last thing the article kind of finishes up with is kind of talking about Harris and his ownership style and, where the future kind of lies for Washington. And they talked about how Harris is shown in past situations the want to have a mixture of analytics and, kind of just a personnel guy with experience, whether you played the sport or you've just been around it for a very long time. And he did that with the 76ers, with Daryl Morey and Elton Brand. So Brand is the former player that kind of is in tune to what's going on, evaluating talent, et cetera, et cetera. Morey is more of the analytics guy, right? Same thing he did in the NHL. The coach is a former player that has an eye for talent, but is really more so away from the numbers, more of a eye test type of guy. And then he backed him with a very heavy analytics front office. So it balances itself out. So I think the next guy that's coming in here probably is going to have a working knowledge of analytics, but it's not going to be his primary tool of usage in determining what should be done. I think that's why Eugene Shin is here for the analytics portion of all of this. And I think the guy that is ultimately going to become the GM here is going to be a football guy. He's going to be a guy that is hands-on, that is a great identifier of talent and has a plan in place for what he thinks Washington should be moving forward and how he would be able to execute that plan. And he should be able to then convey that to Josh Harris in a way that makes it feel like a no-brainer hire. So I don't think the next guy is going to be like super analytics based. I think that's why Eugene Shin is here, personally. In reading the article, that's kind of how it was relayed to us as the readers, is that this is what his track record states, and this is what he's done in 2 previous stops. some of the sources that they used for the article pretty much said, hey, they about to clean house. We don't stand a chance, essentially, which we all know that as well. There are a lot of changes that are about to take place. And one of those changes is going to be a massive one, and that's the roster. It's going to be an overhaul. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight as well. But it's a good read. If you got about 12 to 15 minutes, I suggest you take a look at that article. ESPN.com. If you have the app, just hit the Washington logo or hit the Washington portion of the app, and it's one of the first stories when you hit the news tab, and you'll be able to read it. But and then my social media feed was set ablaze last night. I'm on with Protect. Shout out to Tones and everybody that was on that stream last night. I think by the time I got in there, we were about 9 deep. It was Ed. It was Josh Taylor. It was one dude I didn't even know who he was. He was brand new. I had never seen him before, so that was nice to meet him and see who he was. I mean, there's a bunch of us. I don't want to not it. Nadi was up there, and whole bunch of people was up there. Why am I blanking on my man's name? Because he was going in for Terry. He was going hard in the paint for Terry. I'm blanking on his damn name, man. But it was a bunch of people up there, and so I'm on the stream. We kicking it or whatever, and I look down at my Twitter, and I've got like 27 notifications. So I'm thinking somebody tagged me in some bullshit, and people were commenting, and I got caught in it. There's nothing worse than somebody looping you and roping you into a group text that you really don't want to be a part of in the first place. And then people just start lighting up that group text, and you're getting the remnants of it. And you're like, bro, why did you do that? Text me off on the side. Don't group me into no text chain that's about to get me lit up. That's what I thought happened, because people love to at you and tag you on posts, and you're like, okay, bro. And now I'm getting all kinds of notifications that don't pertain to me. But this wasn't that. Brian Branch was on one of those X little hangouts. I don't even know what they're called, but it's spaces. I think it's what it's called. It's a space, right? They were in one of those spaces, and he was talking about the draft, and somehow they got on the topic of the draft, and they asked him, where did he think he was going to end up? And he was like, well, Washington, the Commanders told me that if I was still available at 16, they were going to take me. He said, but obviously you can't believe nothing they say. And then he caught himself, and he was like, nothing anybody says, during draft time. But remember, he was a name that was floated about at 16. And, obviously he didn't get taken into the 40s in the second round, but still, I think a lot of people would have been a lot more understanding of the pick had they gone Brian Branch in the first round and not Emmanuel Forbes. Branch I said this when I was evaluating him. He looked like Tyrann Mathieu. That's what he looks like. He doesn't have top end speed, which is why he fell to the second round. He's just a football player. And if you give him an opportunity, he'll make you pay for mistakes. He's heady. He's around the ball all the time. He's physical. He'll come up and tackle. He can cover. He's great in short areas, good quickness, and he's got ball skills. And he's shown that already this year. I remember typing into the MOBB on Sunday. I'm watching the Lions and Saints game among the 6 games that were on at the time in front of me. And he makes this crazy pick, balls deflected, and he kind of makes this crazy, one-handed interception. And I just remember typing into the mob, man, Brian Branch is crazy. and thinking, damn, we could have got him. And then hearing him say, they told me they were going to take me at 16, but obviously they decided not to. And look, that every team has the right to do that. The Cowboys told Randy Moss if he was available at their pick in 1998, they were going to take him. He was available at their pick, and they passed on him. And then he torched them on Thanksgiving Day later on that year and made them pay for it, right? But it happens all the time, you know. More so in basketball than in the NFL. You rarely get a promise from a team. In the NBA, you get promises all the time. Hey, stop working out for other teams. We promise if you're on the board at 6, we're going to take you. Stop working out for teams. You get that in the NBA all the time, but that's not an NFL thing. Rarely do you promise a player that you're going to take them because anything could happen. But I don't know how much of a difference Brian Branch would have made this year in particular, but I just look at it from this perspective. One of the biggest needs I said that we had going into last year was we needed a slot corner. We need a nickel. I remember I told you last year, and that's a part of why the you know, you can talk as much shit as you want about Bobby McCain, but Bobby, and I told y'all, I said we're gonna miss Bobby because Bobby was a vocal leader in the locker room. He held guys accountable, and Bobby was a communicator. Bobby was making sure that everybody was on the same page. Bobby made sure the dudes lined up correctly. Bobby was one of those pieces that you thought was interchangeable or you thought Bobby could be replaced, that he was disposable. But in reality, Bobby was more important to this defense. He wasn't good in his role, but his leadership was invaluable. And I told you guys as much. I said, we're going to miss Bobby. I said, I'm going to miss Bobby because he holds dudes accountable. He's not afraid to speak his piece, and he's a communicator. And we've lacked that this year. And they said in that article, Jack's defense is really better suited for veteran players because it's complicated. Anyway, Bobby was horrible in the slot. When they finally gave Defoe the keys to the safety position and they wanted to continue to get Bobby on the field because, again, he was a really good communicator, they put Bobby back to what was once his natural position. It isn't anymore, which was nickel. He came into the league as a nickel corner out of Memphis. So they stuck him in the slot and he was getting cooked last year. But I felt like after watching what we watched last year, we needed to get a nickel. Remember, I was dead set on getting us a nickel corner. And somehow that turned into needing a boundary corner, and they thought that moving Benjamin St. Juice back inside was a good idea. And I was like, yeah, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Just leave him outside. I wouldn't put it back inside. And that proved to be a problem for us because even when Manuel Forbes was healthy, they still weren't really fond of putting Juice inside. They would do it. Obviously, they were doing it. But we still need a nickel corner. And Brian Branch would have filled that void for us. And in looking at the last two drafts, and I don't regret the 2022 draft at all. I don't. But looking at how they wanted to play defense, you would think that players like Kyle Hamilton, who they passed on in 2022, and Brian Branch, who they passed on in 2023, would be players that they would salivate at the chance to get to play the style of defense that they want to play. You would think those would be players that they would really be anxious to get their hands on. You want a Buffalo nickel, a guy playing around the line of scrimmage and being a nuisance and being dangerous. Kyle Hamilton's your man. You want a guy that can play the slot, still be physical, come up, make tackles, be supportive in the run game, but can still play underneath zones, have zone eyes, be aggressive in those zone drops, but also be able to run with guys in space, Brian Branch is your man. And they instead went, Quan Martin. And again, I'm not giving up on Quan, but it hasn't worked out in his rookie season. But anyway, such is life. Brian Branch pretty much said the Commanders lied to him. What's new? We were lied to this year as well. And we've been lied to many, many a times in the past. So welcome to the club, Brian Branch. And trust me, you didn't want to be here. You ended up right where you were supposed to be. You're on a winning team. You're going to the playoffs, probably going to win your division for the first time since 1991 or some shit like that. Enjoy it, bro. You dodged a bullet. That's essentially what happened. You dodged a bullet. Anyway, I digress. Let's go ahead and move on to in other news, where I want to have a conversation with you guys about this roster. So much has been made about the ineptitude of this roster and how bad it is. My thing has been and still remains that if you felt this way before the season, cool. I got no issues with you. If you've done a complete 180 on the vast majority of players on this roster after 1 year of ball, then I do have an issue with you, because things change and situations are fluid. And I'm aware of this. But one of the strengths coming into the season was the defensive line. It hasn't been this season. We haven't gotten the production out of the two ends that were here before they were traded. They were solid, but they weren't as impactful as you would like them to be. And we definitely haven't gotten the intended effect from the two defensive tackles, specifically Daron Payne from a sack standpoint, and just the disruptive standpoint. His disruptive nature in 2022 was ridiculous. He would take over games at times. We haven't seen that. He had a possession against Denver, and he had some moments against Atlanta, but by and large, it's been a disappointing season for Daron Payne. He's almost been non-existent at times. And, Allen has been solid, but, he's not the one that I see as dominant. He's the one that I see as a really good piece. He's really good. But Daron is the one that has a chance to be like Quinnen Williams and Chris Jones. Like, he has the opportunity, the ability to be, on par with those guys. I don't see that for Allen. I don't see Jonathan Allen really ever being a 12-sack guy. I could see Daron being 12-sack. He had 11.5 last year. I could see him doing that again. That's why this year's been disappointing. But, he may be dealing with something just like Jonathan's dealing with plantar fasciitis. That doesn't go away. It doesn't just go away while you're still playing on it. It takes time for that to heal. But he's not going to complain about it. Anyway, that was a strength coming into the season. It turned out to not be as strong of a strength, but it's still one of the better portions of the roster. I still believe in Daron Payne and John Allen. Sorry. If you don't, that's fine. I do. They didn't just forget how to play football, and they didn't just become trash overnight. They're still good football players. Got to add some stuff around them, though. What this says to me is they're not game wreckers when they're getting double teamed all the time. They can't consistently beat double teams and things of that nature. They need other guys to take attention away from them. And this is the part where the coordinator comes into play. You got to create some one-on-ones for them. You got to create some matchups for them. But wide receiver was another one of those positions we went into the season thinking was a strong suit. It hasn't gone the way that we thought, but is that because the receivers are all of a sudden trash, or they're not good enough? Did they regress? I don't think that's the case. Just don't think. And, we had this spirited debate last night on Protect's show. And Tim, that's his damn name. Tim. I don't know why I was blanking, but Tim was not having that Terry McLaurin shit. He wasn't having it, bro. Tim was like, I don't give a damn what y'all talking about. Terry's elite. And he made his case. I disagree with him. I hear what he's saying, but Terry's not elite. And that's okay. Terry's good. He's damn good. And my point has always been, you can win with every receiver that we have on this team. We have a really good receiving core. That hasn't changed. We went into the season feeling good about them. I still feel really good about them. Am I disappointed in the drops that Jahan has had this year, or some of the opportunities Terry's had to make some plays and he hasn't? Yeah, you're damn right I'm upset about that. And I'm disappointed that Jahan didn't catch that ball at the end of the Giants game, or Jahan had that big drop in the first Eagles game on a third down that would have moved the sticks when they couldn't stop us. And we went pretty much radio silent in the third quarter, and that was a chance to move the sticks on the first possession of the third quarter when we still had the lead, and who knows what would have happened on that drop. Yeah, I'm pissed off about those drops. But you know what? I still think Jahan's a damn good football player. I do. I don't think he's gotten enough opportunities, and I don't think they've created enough situations for him to win and get him the ball in space. And I feel the same way about Terry. I feel the same way about Terry McLaurin. So nothing's changed. And Curtis continues to impress. I want him back. I hope the price tag is right. I would love to have Curtis Samuel back. I don't know if the new regime will come in here and feel the same way. As a matter of fact, I doubt that they're going to feel the same way. But I like him a lot. I think he's been exceptional this year, and I'd love to have him back. You know what? I've said this to myself for the last 2 years in particular, but I think it's really becoming evident now, though. We need a big receiver. And I slapped myself like 2 nights ago. And I don't regret them choosing, Jahan Dotson. But remember when they wanted Drake London, and I was adamant I wanted no parts of Drake London. I'm so glad the Falcons saved us from a mistake. Drake London's been really good. And I don't think he was worth the number 8 overall pick or whatever it was the Falcons spent on him. And we would have been 11th, and we would have spent the 11th pick on him if he was available. And I don't think he was worth that either. But he's the equivalent of what T. Higgins is in Cincinnati. And T. Higgins was like the first pick of the second round, so like 33rd overall selection. That's what I see Drake London as. T. Higgins, right? Boy, we could use one of those. He's a free agent, by the way. I don't want to pay the money that it's going to cost to get T. Higgins here. I'm not interested. I'd rather get us a tall receiver in the draft. And again, you got to do the work. You don't want to draft Antonio Gandy Golden all over again. You got to do the work. But boy, we could use a big receiver. All of our receivers look the same, sort of move the same. Curtis has got a little bit more agility. So does Jahan, but we don't have any brutes out there. We don't have any guys that, against sticky man-to-man coverage or just, somebody being handsy, that's just going to, like Terry can, but Terry also can be affected by physical play. We don't have a T. Higgins or a DeAndre Hopkins or an A.J. Brown or someone that's just big and physical, will fight you at the point of catch and come down with it. You want to get physical and handsy, they can too, and they'll win because they're just bigger and stronger than you are. We need one of those dudes. Just having some size. Your tight ends can't be the only size that you have. It's too many big receivers that come into this league every year for us to just have a bunch of dudes hovering around 6 feet tall at the receiver position. We don't even have a 6'2" dude. I'm not even asking for the 6'5" behemoth like Mike Evans you know what I'm saying, or 6'4" receiver that, you know, like DK Metcalf. I'm not even asking for that. Just give me a 6'2" dude. We don't even have one of those. Maybe Byron Pringle is 6'2". I don't know, but we need some size, man. Pause. Anyway, I'm gonna say this. I want to ask you guys a question. We had a spirited debate. And before I get to the roster as a whole, I want to have this conversation with you first. And put it in the comment section. Where do you rank Terry McLaurin in the league, number-wise? How do you see him? Is he top 5? I don't know how the hell you could put him there, but if that's your prerogative, do your thing. Is he top 10? Is he 11 to 14? Is he 15 to 19? Is he 20 to 25? Is he 26 to 32? Where do you have him? All right. Is he further back than 32? Where's Terry for you? All right. And we'll just run through these real quick. NCR 10 says he's 20 to 25. Tyler C says top 10 to 12. Rufio says, I think he's top 20. All right. Frankie Yo says he's top 20. Door Gunner says 15 to 20. Abel Ambrosio says 15 to 20. Niles J says top 25. Chase Hugh or Hall says top 20, maybe 15. All right. Daddy D says probably 15 to 20-ish. All right. Eddie Clayton says 20 to 25. Right now, C-Trill says, I'd say 14 to 15. Jay, top 15. All right. Let's get a couple more of these. Miss Perry says top 15. Severio says 15 to 20. Justin Evans says top 15 tops. Top 20 easy. Jeremiah says top 20. Atomic Ant says top 15. Garage Gym Life, top 10. JLG says Terry at his best is top 10, but top 20 for sure. Jado says top 15. Never Again times 2 says 11 to 15. Darnell Kelly says 16 to 20. T Money says Terry is top 10 for sure. Need for the Blaze says top 15 for sure, maybe top 10 off the top of my head. All right, Dream Team Buddha says Terry top 10 with a better offense, but with us, he's 20. Brian P says top 15. Javon Nicholson says 15 to 20. All right. So the consensus is he's somewhere from 15, 12, let's say 12 for some of you to about 25, somewhere in there, right? But a lot of you say top 15. Some of you say 10 to 15, right? This was the exercise I wanted to go through last night, but I didn't want to hijack somebody else's show. I said to myself, let's just save this for my show tomorrow night. I made a quick list, and I could probably put more names on this list. But I think this is enough, because if I start putting more names on the list, I think I'm going to water it down, and it would almost turn into an exercise in futility. These names, I think, are good enough. What I want to do is go through this with you real quick. And you tell me yes or no on whether you think Terry McLaurin is better than this receiver. Because often when we throw out numbers, we don't consider other players around the league. We just throw a number out. Well, you can solve that quickly by just going through a list of names and saying, would you take Terry over this guy? If you're and you can't be biased when you're doing this. You have to take off your Commander's colored glasses and you have to be objective. If you can't do that, then this exercise doesn't work. Because you all know, and again, it's preference based. So for you, that player may not move the needle for you, but we got to be honest with ourselves with some of these names, okay? So I'm going to get out my pen. See if I have a highlighter. That's even better. I'm going to get out my highlighter, and we're going to go through these names real quick. All right. Is Terry McLaurin better than A.J. Brown? Simple question. Yes or no? And I'll just be perusing through the comment section as I say this. All right. I see a lot of no's popping up. I think we can all agree he's not better than A.J. Brown. So that's one, right? Would you take Terry McLaurin over Devontae Smith? Yes or no? Terry McLaurin greater than Devontae Smith? Yes or no? So I'm seeing a lot of yeses. So I'm not gonna highlight that one. So you're taking Terry over Devontae Smith. How about Stephon Diggs? You're taking Terry McLaurin over Stephon Diggs. No. I see a lot of no's. I agree with that. That's two. Jamar Chase. I don't even think I need to wait for your response on that one. I'm just gonna highlight Jamar Chase. That's a hard no, right? How about Justin Jefferson? I think I can do the same thing here for that one and go ahead and highlight Jay Jettis. That's 4. CeeDee Lamb. Again, take your Washington Commanders colors glasses off. Is he better than CeeDee Lamb? Yes or no? Okay. I see a lot of yeses, but I see a lot of no's too. No, he's not better than CeeDee Lamb right now. DK Metcalf, a fellow 2019 receiver that was drafted slightly ahead of him. Is he better than DK Metcalf? Would you take Terry McLaurin over DK Metcalf? Yes or no? All right. I'm looking at some of these responses. That's a toughie for y'all. I'm seeing a lot of yeses. You would take Terry over DK. I see a lot of yeses and a lot of no's. I'm gonna leave that one off. Personally, I'd take DK over Terry McLaurin. That's me, but I'm not going to highlight him. Amari Cooper, better than Terry? No. Would you take Terry or Amari Cooper? Yes or no? Terry or no for a Cooper? Yes for Terry. Amari Cooper. Okay, so I'm gonna leave him off the list. I see a lot of yeses out there. Deebo Samuel. Terry, another fellow 2019 receiver / do-it-all dynamo. Deebo Samuel. Would you take him over Terry McLaurin? So what I need y'all to write for, so this is moving forward. If Terry's better, you would type in, yes, I would take Terry. No, if you would take the other receiver. That's how we're going to do it from here on out. So it's easy. Yes, if you're going with Terry. No, if you're going with the other receiver. So Deebo Samuel. Yes for Terry. No for Deebo. So type it in now. Even if you already typed it in, type it again. I see a lot of no's. So we're going to highlight Deebo Because I said if you would take Terry, yes. If you want Debo, you would put no. I see a lot of no's. So I'm gonna highlight Debo Samuel. Chris Olave. Would you rather? So yes for Terry, no for Olave. Okay, so I see a bunch of yeses popping up. So you're taking Terry over Olave. Okay. Mike Evans. Mike Evans. 10 straight years of 1,000 yards receiving. Yes or no? And you hear that and you're thinking, damn, Mike old is a bitch. Mike's 31, Terry's about to be 29. And they're not that different in age. I'm highlighting Mike Evans. I see a lot of no's. DJ Moore. DJ Moore. Are you taking Terry McLaurin or are you taking DJ Moore? Remember, yes, if you're rolling with Terry, no, if you're rolling with the opposite receiver. Okay. DJ Moore. All right. That's a mixture. I'm seeing a lot more yeses, though. I'll leave that one blank. I don't really have to ask this one. I'm just going to highlight it. Tyreek Hill, but I'm just going to highlight it. I don't need to ask. Devontae Adams. I don't even feel like I need to ask that one either. Right? I'm just going to highlight that one. I'm not even giving y'all the option on that one. Cortland Sutton. Would you take Cortland Sutton over Terry? Again, yes, if you're taking Terry. No, if you're taking Cortland Sutton. Okay, see a lot of yeses for Terry on Cortland, so we'll go over it. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown or Terry McLaurin? I think I know where this one's going to go, but I'm asking anyway. Yes for Terry, no for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Boy, that one's a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. It's so close, I'm going to just leave it blank. But that one was closer than I thought it was going to be. Cooper Kupp. I'm not even leaving that one up to y'all. I'm just going to highlight Cooper Kupp. We're just going to keep it pushing. Jalen Waddle. Yes for Terry, no for Waddle. Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle. Yeah, I'm taking. I see a lot of no's. I'm gonna highlight that one. I see a lot of no's in there. I think I know how this is gonna go, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Garrett Wilson. Yes for Terry, no for Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson. Wow. I thought Garrett would win this. It looks like y'all are going with Terry. I would have taken Garrett Wilson over Terry personally, but seems like y'all think that Terry's better than Garrett Wilson. I think y'all bumped y'all damn heads is what I think. But that's y'all choice. This is not my list. This is your list. I'm gonna let you have it. I'm not gonna highlight them. George Pickens. Terry or George Pickens? Yes for Terry, no for George Pickens. That's about what I thought. We'll leave him off. And again, I know it's early on some of these players, but you know it when you see it, right? Zay Flowers, Baltimore Ravens rookie wide receiver. Zay Flowers. Would you take Zay Flowers or would you take Terry McLaurin? Remember, yes for Terry, no for Zay Flowers. All right, I'm gonna leave that one off. I see a lot of yeses, but Zay looks like he's gonna be a little different. And then last but not least, and again, I could probably add 5 or 6 more names to this list, but again, we'd be at that point. Now we're just trying to add names to the list. I think these are the best of the best in terms of every team. You take their best receiver or so, the guys that belong on this list. Some teams have 2, on this list, like the Dolphins, like the Eagles. Keenan Allen. Yes for Terry, no for Keenan Allen. I see a lot of no's there. So I'm going to highlight Keenan Allen. Okay. So that's the list, right? That's the list I came up with. There were other players that you could have, but I don't think they're better than Terry. Like Calvin Ridley. I don't think he's better than Terry McLaurin, right? So I didn't put him on the list. There are other players that are solid receivers, but I don't think they warranted being on this list. All right. So after totaling up what you guys decided, AJ Brown won. Stephon Diggs, and this is in no particular order. These are just receivers you would take over Terry McLaurin. Okay, it's not in any order. AJ Brown, that's 1. Stephon Diggs, that's 2. Jamar Chase, that's 3. Justin Jefferson, that's 4. CeeDee Lamb, that's 5. Deebo Samuel, that's 6. Mike Evans, that's 7. Tyreek Hill, that's 8. Devontae Adams, that's 9. Cooper Kupp, that's 10. Jalen Waddle, that's 11. Keenan Allen, that's 12. So that would put Terry somewhere in that 13, 14 neighborhood. Essentially, after you go through the list, this is what you guys chose. Now, he'd probably be a little bit further down the list for me because there's some guys that you guys didn't highlight that I would have highlighted. I'm taking DK Metcalf over Terry McLaurin. I'm taking Garrett Wilson over Terry McLaurin, but you guys didn't decide to do that, right? So he'd probably be 2, 3, maybe 4 more spots down on my list. But at the end of the day, and I seen somebody say Michael Pittman. I'm not taking Michael Pittman Jr. over Terry McLaurin. I'm not. I thought about putting him on this list. I could have put him on this list. I don't think most people in the comment section, we could throw his name in there right now. That's fine. Michael Pittman Jr., Terry McLaurin, or Michael Pittman Jr. And you guys could go ahead and vote on that one real quick. And if it's different than what I think, then let's see what you guys say. Michael Pittman Jr. or Terry McLaurin? Yes for Terry, no for Michael Pittman Jr. Oh, there's one that I left off this list. I'm pretty sure I know who you would take. Yeah, see, all of you guys are saying yes. Nobody's taking Michael Pittman Jr. That's why I didn't put him on the list. Would you take Tyler Lockett or Terry McLaurin? I think they're very similar. I see a lot of you are still taking Terry in that situation. I think they're very close. I think they're very comparable, honestly. That I think that's what Terry is in this league. Is he's a Tyler Lockett type. I think he's slightly above Tyler Lockett though, but I think that's who he is really. When it's all said and done, a slightly better version of Tyler Lockett is what I would classify Terry McLaurin as, I guess. But anyway, somebody said DeAndre Hopkins. I thought about putting him on the list, but he's not what he once was. You could tell he's towards the back end of his career now. He's still impactful, but I don't think you're taking DeAndre Hopkins. If you gave two teams an opportunity to sign Terry McLaurin or DeAndre Hopkins right now, I think teams are taking Terry McLaurin. That's just personally what I would think teams would do at this point. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Anyway, I digress. So yes, I just wanted to do that quickly. So now what I want to do is I want to take the opportunity to look at the roster as a whole now that we went through that exercise. And I just want to go through the roster and I want to chart, I want to tally how many of these dudes we actually think are going to be back next year. Because I think we can kind of look at the roster and look, it's not going to be, we're not going to hit it on its head. Some of these dudes, the next group will come in here, they'll evaluate. And look, you get to bring 90 guys to camp. So you don't have to get rid of all of these dudes, but understand that this next draft is going to be robust. And it's not just going to be the 9 or 10 selections that they have in the draft. They're going to go after undrafted free agents heavy to replace the Tariq Castro Fields and the, Jalen Harris's on this roster that they didn't, pick up here, that are guys that weren't drafted. They're going to replace those guys. You've seen the last of Derek Gore or Jonathan Williams. Those guys are gone. They're not going to bring those guys back, right? So I just want to go through this list and, let's see how many players are on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would assume 53. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 1, 32, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 50, 1, 2, and 3. So 53, as I imagined. Then you have the injury reserve, right? And a lot of these dudes ain't going to be here. These injury reserve guys, like we probably seen the last of Dax Milne. He ain't going to be on this roster next year. Not that you care. FA is done. He was on the last year of his deal anyway. Dejon Harris was a staff favorite for what we don't know because we never saw this dude do anything. That includes special teams. I don't even remember him being like an impactful guy on special teams. Not to say that he wasn't. So he won't be here. Sadiq is probably done. He's on the last year of his rookie deal. Curtis Brooks was a guy that they spent some of the most free agent money on as a UDFA. He probably won't be here next year. Again, I can't say that for certain. The next group may come in here and give him an opportunity. He's one of the guys you would like to see, right? In a situation like right now, but he's not healthy. Not Curtis Brooks. I mean the practice squad. Mason Brooks. That's what I meant. He's one of the guys you at this point you like, all right, what we got? But you're still trying to evaluate Sam, so you can't just put anything in front of him. But at this point, Casimir Allen should be returning punts. Like that's where we at in the process now. But again, you don't want to send the message to the rest of the team that hey, we done gave up. But you know what it is at this point. A lot of these dudes ain't gonna be here. Jonathan, when you seen the last of Jonathan Williams, he's done. All right. Benning Patoa, he's done. Like you're not gonna see a lot of these dudes back next year that have been hanging around. Jake Fromm is gone. All right, a lot of these dudes gonna be gone. But let's get to the actual roster itself, and we're gonna go through these guys one by one. I think when it's all said and done, we'll probably come away with about 25 to 30 dudes that are still left standing that we think will be around next year, or at least be given an opportunity, that they won't just be discarded at season's end. Nick Gates, I don't know what his contract situation is. I don't know what kind of a deal we signed him to. If he signed a 1-year deal, he's gone. If he signed a 3-year deal and there's still some guaranteed money and it's a healthy amount, which we didn't sign him for that much money, so I can't imagine his cap hit being that significant. I'm just not very aware of what his contract currently is. My guess is he didn't sign a long contract with us. Probably a 3-year deal. Minimal money, like $15 million or something like that. My guess is he's back. My guess is he's back. I think I remember him signing a 3-year deal. Let me get a different pen. Yeah, there we go. So that's one. Tyler Larson is 32 years old. He's done. This is it for him. Here in Washington, at least. I don't see him being back, especially with Ricky Stromberg being next year he'll be in his second year. He's naturally a center. They tried to put him at guard. He's naturally a center. I think Gates and Ricky Stromberg, and they may add another guy to the mix. I'd be shocked if they didn't. Larson's gone, I think. Tariq Castro Fields. Interesting, big, tall, long corner paws. I don't think it hurts to have a guy like that around. I think he gets a chance in camp. I don't think he makes the roster, but I think he'll be around all offseason. Manuel Forbes, he's going to be back. That's 3. Kendall Fuller, as much as I want Kendall Fuller back, I think he's gone. This is the last year of his deal. I just don't think they're going to re-sign him. He's going to be turning 29 here shortly. I would love to have K Full back. I just don't think he's going to be back. Christian Holmes, he's gone. If they can replace him, he's gone. Danny Johnson, they just signed him to an extension this offseason. Again, don't know the terms of that agreement. I don't know. I don't even know if Danny plays a mean special teams. My guess is Danny's gone. That's my guess. Benjamin St. Juste will be here. That's 4. Quan Martin will be here. That's 5. Jalen Harris, I'm not sure. He's a rookie. He actually looks like there's a little something to him watching him on tape. It won't hurt. We don't have any defensive ends under contract. None. Other than the 2 rookies from last year. It won't hurt to bring him back. I think he'll be in the mix at camp. I'll write him down right now. KJ Henry will be back. Andre Jones will be back. Again, this is only for the offseason, like the 90-man roster. I'm not talking about like the final 53. A lot of these dudes ain't going to be on the 53-man roster next year. But we could talk about that once we see what they've done in the offseason. I'm just trying to project, who will be here and who won't be once they start releasing guys, free agency hits, and you see what they've allowed guys to walk or they've cut guys loose. This is what I'm trying to predict now. James Smith-Williams, contract is up. He's gone. Casey Toohill, contract up. He's gone. And again, they could like some of these dudes that contract is up and decide to bring them back like a James Smith-Williams. They may value him and say, hey, you're not bad as a backup defensive end. We'd like to have you back. I think he's gone. I think Casey Toohill's gone. Jonathan Allen, we know he's going to be here. For Darian Mathis, we know he's going to be here. Deron Payne, we know he's going to be here. John Ridgway, I think he's going to be here. Julian Good-Jones, gone. Chris Paul, I think Chris Paul will still be here. Andrew Wiley, unfortunately, he'll still be here. They better kick his ass inside the guard. I know that. Joey Sly, he'll still be here. Good kickers are hard to find. I know y'all don't love Joey. Give me a real long snapper, and then we can fairly assess Joey Sly. Until then, Sly's my guy. Cody Barton, I think they signed him to a one-year deal. Until they get more linebackers in here, you got to assume that he's back. I think they signed him to a one-year deal. If they sign him to a one-year deal, he's gone. So I'm not writing him down because I think he signed a one-year deal here. Jabril Cox, I'm going to write him down. I think he's back next year. Jamin Davis is back next year. Khalik is interesting because I don't think he's under contract for next season. And if he's not, I don't see them bringing him back. Just for the sake of saying, I'm going to put Khalik down right now. David Mayo is gone. Cam Cheeseman will be here, but they will bring in competition. They will bring in competition. He's been awful this season. Tressway definitely here. Jacoby Brissett, he will be gone. He will be on a new team next year. Sam Howell will be here. Will he be the starting quarterback is the question, but whether he is or isn't, he'll be here regardless. Alex Arma will be gone. Antonio Gibson will be gone. Brian Robinson Jr. will be here. Chris Rodriguez will be here. Terrell Burgess will be gone. Percival Butler will be here. Cam Curl, that's a toughie, man. Contract's up. They're not gonna slap the franchise tag on him. I don't think he's made enough plays to resonate with the new group. I don't think they're gonna value Cam Curl the way that we do as fans. Personally, he just hasn't done enough. And I would even argue that his play has regressed here of late. He's giving up big plays on the back end, and he's supposed to be the guy back there that's tying this shit together, and it's just not happening. And it's not all on him, but we look to him to be one of the leaders on that back end. It's a young secondary, especially the safeties. It's the blind leading the blind, and he's the only veteran back there, and I just don't see it right now. I think he's gone. And that's a sad state of affairs because he should be here. He should be here. I think he's gone, though. Sam Cosmi will be here. So we're already at 25 players. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 players. Leno, I think he's got one more year on his contract. I still think he's getting cut. If they get that tackle, so what it's going to really hinge upon, if they get that first-round tackle, Charles Leno is gone, I think. Because Leno's already said he's not playing right tackle. He's not looking to flip sides. So I think Leno's gone. Because I think you can save some money under the cap if you cut Leno next year after the season. Cole Luke, I would bring him back, but I don't think they're going to bring him back either. Like, they might flush the entire tackle situation and start anew. You got to bring somebody back, though. Cole Luke is the guy I would bring back. I really would. I really just want to write him down because he's my guy, but I'm not going to do that. I don't think he's going to be back. Trent Scott's not going to be back either. Bates will be here. Hodges is gone. Like, for whatever reason, they love him. This next group, Logan Thomas is gone. Cole Turner will be here. De'Ami Brown will be here. I don't know if he's going to make the 53-man roster, but he'll be here. Crowder will be gone. Jahan will be here. Terry will be here. Pringle will be gone. Samuel, I think he's going to be gone. And Mitchell Tinsley will be here. I think he'll be here. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't have a shot in the offseason. Again, will he make the 53-man roster? Highly unlikely. All right, let's go through the injured reserve. See if anybody's here that will be here next year. David Botta's gone. Curtis Brooks is gone. Sadiq Charles is gone. Braden Daniels will be here. And maybe he could be an answering guard for all we know. We have no clue, no idea. Derek Forrest will be here. Dejon Harris will be gone. Dax Milne will be gone. F.A. Obata will be gone. Jeremy Reeves should still be here. Amani Rogers should still be here. Ricky Stromberg will still be here. Let's get to the practice squad. And I think I almost feel like you could wipe this whole group out, to be honest with you. Maybe Casimir Allen. Maybe Mason Brooks. I'll write down Casimir Allen, Mason Brooks. We need all the offensive line bodies we can get that have any upside. So Casimir Allen, Mason Brooks are here. I think you could pretty much do away with the rest of this group. I actually like Ben and Patoa Ia, but Patoa Ai. But I don't think he's going to be back either. So there you have it. That's the list of guys that I think are going to be back in total. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 38 guys. And I think the other 52 players will be brand new guys via free agency, the draft, and undrafted rookies that will make up the other 52 players that will come to camp next year as the 93-man roster. You know, heading into training camp. That's what I see happening. That's a pretty significant number. And it might be too big. And it might be more like 50 dudes will be back from what we have now, and they add 40 dudes. But that's how I see it playing out. Some of these dudes that their contracts expired and I just wrote them off, some of them will be back. You know, like they might like James Smith-Williams and sign him to a one-year deal and bring him back. That happens quite often in these types of situations, right? There's no guarantee, but they might like Curtis Hodges, and I think he's useless at this point, but they might like him and think that he's got an upside, and they might bring him back. I just said he's gone, right? Who's to say? They might like Byron Pringle, core special teamer, you know, does the dirty work. They might bring him back, sign him to a one-year deal and give him a shot. Why not, right? Well, we don't know. We'll see. I'm sticking with these 38, though. All right, so that is the roster in a nutshell. And I wanted to have one more conversation as we transition to our final segment, social media maneuvers. I wanted to have one more conversation with y'all about the roster before we get to your comments. And I want to ask you about the core of this team. And we'll have a bunch of these conversations between now and the offseason and, you know, March when free agency hits, et cetera, et cetera. We'll have a bunch of these conversations. But I want to open up that dialogue now about the core of this team and who we think are the building blocks moving forward. Because a lot of you have done somewhat of a shift. I don't know if it's a complete 180 on a lot of these players. You haven't completely flipped on them, but you've done a bit of a tap dance on some of these dudes. So correct me if I'm wrong. The core players on this roster are still Terry, John, Duran, and that's it, right? Terry, John, and Duran, right? Tressway. I mean, I don't want to leave Tress out. He's been a pillar here for the better part of a decade, and he continues to still be clutch. I mean, even if you're just talking about him holding the damn ball, catching the shit when Cheeseman's snapping him all over the damn place. Who are your core players? Let me ask that question. Give me a list of, if you can scratch together a list of 5 to 7 dudes, who's the core players that you see, the next regime coming in and saying, hey, we gonna ride you as one of the leaders of this team, one of the guys that we look to help turn this around. If you can't get to 5, so be it. But you can give me a list of 5 guys, 5 to 7. All right. So I see Terry, Allen, Payne, B-Rob. That's a good list there. B-Rob, Terry, John, Duran, Tress, and Sam. Which Sam? I got 2 Sams in my group, Cosme and Hal. Right. So I think that to me is the 7 right there. I think that's the 7. Oh, Dotson. Don't want to forget about him. That's a good one too. This is why I need y'all help, because I'll forget. So I'm going to write this down. So let me get my pencil. I'm going to write this down. So we got Howell. We got Terry. We got Dotson. We got B-Rob. We got Allen, Payne, Tress, Cosme. All right. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If Reeves is back, he's healthy. He's a core special teamer. I hesitate to put him on the list because I don't know his contractual situation. I know that they had signed him to something, but I don't know if it was an actual 3-year deal. I think it was like they picked up like a option on him or something and made him, they make him like a restricted free agent or something. I don't remember what they did. I just don't think it was like them getting into a long-term relationship with him. So I can't really say if I would put him on the list or not. Jamin, I like that. I think Jamin's played well. I think Jamin is continuing to progress. And I put Jamin down on this list. I put him down on this list. I think that's a good name as well. I think that's a good group right there. Sam Howell, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, B-Rob, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Tress Way, Sam Cosme, and Jamin Davis are guys that we definitively know we can roll with next year. Guys that Sam is the one guy that we're not sure what decision they're going to make in terms of whether he's going to be the starter here next year or not. But assuming that he is, these are all guys that are current starters that we can assume right now they'll be starters next year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Right. And then there are other players that you could add to this list. They're not going to be building blocks, foundational building blocks, but they're guys that are going to be on a roster, like Emmanuel Forbes. You just spent the first round pick on him, right? Et cetera, et cetera. But I think that's a good core right there. I like that group. I like that group. And if Cam Curl is back, and the only reason I hesitate to put him down on this list is because his contract is up, and I don't know if the next regime is going to value him the way that we as fans value him. And so I won't put him down on this list because there's no guarantee that he'll be back. All right. All right, let's get to your comments. We start off with Victor Von Doom. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Victor Von Doom writes, how do you feel about Al Harris, Cowgirls DB coach, as our DC next year? I've seen his name floated about, and I like the interactions that he had with Deron Bland on Monday night or Thursday night when he was getting cooked. He was constantly motivating him in his ear, and when he got that pick, he was right there telling him, hey, we're not done yet. Get another one, right? But he wouldn't let him hold his head down. And talking to Law, Al Harris has been huge in the development of those DBs in Dallas. So I don't know philosophically what his style of play calling would be. I would assume that, he would take bits and pieces from some of the coordinators he played for during his playing career. And then, what Dan Quinn has done and maybe some other coaches that he's been around since his playing career has come to an end and his coaching career has began. I don't know. I don't know about him being a defensive coordinator or not. The whole offensive defensive coordinator thing, I don't really get too hung up in that because honestly, until you hire your GM and then the GM hires a head coach, I don't know how you can even start to make those, decisions because we don't even know if we're going offensive or defensive minded head coach. You don't need a DC if you hire a defensive minded head coach, right? The likelihood is they still may go out and hire a defensive coordinator, but like Robert Saleh is still heavily involved in what the 49ers are doing or the Jets are doing defensively. Jeff Ulbrich is running the defense, but him and Robert Saleh are lockstep, right? Same thing with the Texans and DeMeco Ryans. I think DeMeco Ryans actually calls the defense. I think he has a play sheet in his hand, and I think he actually calls the defense. I think. I could be wrong about that. So we could be up here looking at defensive coordinators, and our head coach is a defensive dude. The assumption has been, oh, we're gonna get an offensive-minded guy, so we need to start looking at defensive coordinators. But I don't know. I wouldn't be opposed to it. You ask me how I feel, I wouldn't be opposed to it. We just don't know what his style of coaching would be. I think most people would prefer to go with a known commodity. But it's hard to do that because known commodities usually, unless they get fired where they are, right? Like the whole staff, for instance, nobody wants Jack Del Rio. We're aware of this. When we found him, he was doing TV work for ESPN. So clearly nobody else wanted Jack Del Rio. But let's say Jack didn't get fired after Thanksgiving and he was just let go with the rest of the staff at season's end. Then you could hire a Jack Del Rio, right? That could happen with somebody else where they're somewhere where the entire staff is going to be fired at season's end because they're getting rid of that coaching staff. And then we could pick up their defensive coordinator. But the likelihood is we're probably going to have to find someone like Al Harris, right? That's a defensive backs coach or somebody's linebackers coach to be our defensive coordinator. More likely than not. Again, this is something else you have to take into consideration. Most times when you hire a head coach, he brings his offensive and defensive coordinators with him from where he came. Right? So, for instance, Robert Saleh came from San Francisco. Jeff Ulbrich was in San Francisco as one of the linebacker coaches, and he made him his defensive coordinator. That's what happens. DeMeco Ryans leaves San Francisco. He brings Bobby Slowick, who was the run game coordinator, and all of that stuff with him to be his offensive coordinator. And you see what's going on there, right? Like you're going to bring a guy that you're familiar with. So if we hire Ben Johnson, the likelihood is he's going to bring one of the defensive coaches with him from Detroit to be his defensive coordinator. He's not going to go outside because he trusts that guy. Like, understand, and I talked about this on the podcast today, when you become a head coach, you want guys you can trust. Sometimes you hire a guy that you don't know, and you're okay with that, but most times you want people that you're comfortable working with. You want people that you know you can trust, that you know is going to do a good job, that you know cares. You only know that if you've worked with them and you've been in the building with them, for an entire season or 2 or 3. So the likelihood is if you hire a Ben Johnson or you hire this guy, wherever he came from, that's where the offensive or defensive coordinator is going to come from. Juan Gotti Talking Sports says, is there any defensive coaches you'll be fine with? And Juan was on the show with us, and Juan did a hell of a job too. Juan was on that show with us with ProTech last night. Shout out to Juan Gotti. I think there are probably 3 or 4 defensive dudes who are killing it right now that are probably ready for an opportunity. I don't think that's where I want to go. You know what I'm saying? Like, my whole mindset, because of what I've seen in my football watching experience, I always tell people, and I've told you about guys this probably numerous times, but as humans, we are shaped by our life experiences. So whether it's subconsciously or consciously, you do things based upon the things that you've seen, what you've been told, or what you've experienced. And because I've watched football and I've seen enough instances of getting a defensive-minded coach and then having the offensive coordinator blow up, get a job, and then you have trouble replacing him. We're watching it happen in Philadelphia as we speak. It's funny because Brian Johnson somehow is being mentioned, I guess because the Eagles are winning, but I don't think he's doing a particularly great job as a coordinator in Philadelphia. Do you? He's not doing a better job than Shane Steichen, who got the job in Indy and is killing it right now. That's for damn sure. To me, when you get an offensive-minded guy and he's calling the plays, you don't have to worry about that. That's the only thing that could really upset team chemistry. We're seeing it happen in Buffalo right now. Sean McDermott has done a really good job in Buffalo, but he's a defensive-minded dude, so he has nothing to do with the offense. He turned that over to Brian Daboll. He did a fantastic job. Josh Allen was in the MVP discussion under Brian Daboll. They got to the AFC Championship game with Brian Daboll. They changed the overtime rules because of their loss to Kansas City, but they were in the mix. They were one of the best teams in the AFC. Brian Daboll leaves. The offense hasn't been the same the last 2 years. They just fired Ken Dorsey. Now they're going through that roller coaster ride of trying to figure out who's next because they thought they had a contingency plan. They thought they had the next guy in-house in Ken Dorsey, and they were wrong. The Eagles think they have their next guy in-house in Brian Johnson. Let's see. He may turn out to be a fantastic play caller when it's all said and done. Right now, I don't think he's there. I can tell you this, the Eagles' offense isn't as good as it was last year. But again, they're good enough to win. That's what they've been doing. But we'll see, right? I don't want to deal with that. I've watched enough football to not want to experience that for my team, for my quarterback. I would prefer the whole Drew Brees, Sean Payton dynamic, where you marry young offensive-minded coach with young said quarterback, and they make music together for 10, 12 years, and that's that. That's what I want. I want what they have in Cincinnati with Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow, right? Like, that's what I want. I don't think Zach's going anywhere anytime soon. And as long as Joe Burrow's healthy, he's going to make Zach Taylor look good, even if Zach's wrong. But at least it's continuity. It's consistency. That's what you want. What you don't want is what the Steelers have with Mike Tomlin. Tomlin's a hell of a coach, but he's a defensive-minded guy. So he's turning his offense over to other people. When it was good, it was Uncle Bruce, right? That's when it was at its peak with Uncle Bruce. Slinging a bitch around the yard, been throwing it to all kinds of killer bees, and shit was all nice. Then he goes to Arizona, and they really haven't had a great offensive play caller since. Hence the lack of success, right? I don't want that. They just fired Matt Canada. They can't find an offensive coordinator to save their life in Pittsburgh. I don't want that for us. So while you see what's happening with Dak, right? He was struggling. I mean, he was playing well with Kellen Moore, but there were inconsistencies. They get rid of Kellen Moore. Their head coach, Mike McCarthy, takes over, and that offense is humming. I mean, that's just the best we've seen of Daiquiri. He's not looking sweet like syrup right now. That's what I want from my team. I want a young offensive mind, and I want to marry him with the young quarterback, whether it's Sam or somebody they get in the draft. And I just don't want to have to worry about that. Just worry about finding a quality defensive coordinator. Because even if that guy's really good, he's going to have to prove it for 2, 3, 4 years before somebody's going. Like, it's offensive coordinator. Like I just said, Brian Johnson is in the discussion. I don't think he's going to get a job. Just like Scott Turner, remember? After year one, Scott Turner, we was like, Scott Turner? What? Scott Turner ain't getting no damn job. But his name, it came up. I think that's what's going on with Brian Johnson right now. I don't think he's getting a job. But his name is coming up. But that goes to show you 1 year of Brian Johnson doing a solid job in Philadelphia, and his name's come up. You got to be good as a defensive coordinator for 3, 4 years before somebody going to give you a job. All right. Evero, Jerry Evero has been killing it for the last 3 years. Broncos defense was lights out 2 years in a row, and he's killing it in Carolina this year. The defense ain't the reason they stink. Man still ain't got a job and probably won't get one this year either. Right? And he might be fired. Like, that's the dude I'm trying to go after, if we being honest. But again, whomever you hire is going to have a defensive mind, a defensive coordinator. If we hire an offensive-minded guy, he's going to have a defensive coordinator in mind already. And Evero does play a 3-4 basically defense. But whatever. I don't give a shit. I just know it's effective, wildly effective. He comes from the Vic Fangio tree, and he's cooking up crack on the defensive side of the football. I wouldn't mind a defensive-minded coach, but that's not my preference. I know what I want. I want an offensive-minded dude. And as far as I just told you, Ejiro Evero is a guy that's doing a hell of a job. Dan Quinn obviously is another dude doing a great job. I know people keep bringing up Brian Flores. I'm good on Brian Flores. He doesn't. I don't think he's ready for an opportunity to be a head coach yet. Again, right? And I think he's done okay with Minnesota, but I haven't been blown away. Like, I watched that game against the Bears, and I've watched him all season long. And when he's aggressive, he's aggressive. When he's not, though, he's super passive. Like, they should have beat the Bears. You can't lose to the Bears. Anyway, I digress. Those two in particular, Evero and Quinn, are the two defensive dudes right now that I look at and say, hey, I think they're ready for the show. If somebody's willing to give a defensive dude an opportunity, those are the two that I look at and say, hey, I think they might be ready. Again, I don't know how those guys would interview and what their visions are for a team. Quinn, we know. He's done it before. He's taken a team to a Super Bowl before. We know what he's bringing to the table. Evero, not so much. Right? But anyway, I digress. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB video channel. Writes, Ron is the completion of the reign of terror. Yeah, I think and honestly, this is the final year of the reign of terror. Dan Snyder is finally gone. But it did spill into 2023, if we're being technical about it. He did not relinquish control of this team officially until July is when Harris and his group took over. So, yes, Ronald Rivera is the completion of the reign of terror. You are absolutely correct. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, double up, thank you for doubling up, who writes, for perspective, 2024 will be the first time in 25 plus years we will have a legitimate GM running the football decisions in DC. Yes. And we've talked about that. Like, remember, we talked about quarter of a century. That I think saying it in that context brings the kind of attention that needs to be brought to that particular subject matter. You have to say it like that. For the first time in a quarter of a century, because that sounds more aggressive. It sounds like, God damn, it's been that long? When you say 24 years, yeah, that's a long time. No, quarter of a century, shit. It's still 25 years, but, you know, it just sounds like, damn, y'all been in purgatory for that long? Yeah, it has been that long. You know? Yeah. It's been that long since we've had a real front office structure with no Vinny Serrato or Bruce Allen or no dumbass middleman, no cockamamie, you know, structure where people actually don't have any power like when Scott McCloughan was here, or no coach-centric bullshit. A real, actual, structured front office. First time in this century. The last time we had it was probably a working one, probably 1998. Because 99, we were in the midst of making that transition. Snyder and his group was in the process of buying a team. So the shit was fractured in 99. He tried to come in and veto the trade for Brad Johnson. So 98 is probably the first time since 98 that we've had an actual front office GM, Charlie Casserly, who is making the decisions day in and day out. Crazy, I know. Quarter of a century. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, as always, thank you. Writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise. Our talent is better on both sides. However, we still have the same three issues: strategic awareness, inability to get playmakers the ball on offense, and no consistent pass rush. Thoughts? You're not wrong. You're not wrong. We still lack situational awareness, which you hope the next coach, and if they hire the right guy, we might be able to do away with that. And the getting playmakers the football, I've been crying about it the last 2 years, the last year of Scott Turner, this first year with Eric Bieniemy, but at least it felt like a more concerted effort to get. And I always told you this with Scott. I don't think it was ever Scott's ego in the way. I just think Scott Turner was oblivious to the fact when he started calling plays, he would just get into like this trance almost where he would forget, oh shit, I got 17. I should get him a touch, or I should get him a target, or I should, call a play for him to be the primary read here. He would just be calling plays, and he would kind of just lose sight of the fact that, Eric Bieniemy doesn't give a shit. That's the difference. Scott Turner just was oblivious at times. But when it was brought to his attention, Terry would get 12 or 13 targets in a game, and he'd have 7 catches for 127 yards and a touchdown, or, no touchdowns. But they'd feed him the rock. Eric Bieniemy, we could literally have this, and he'll smile and he'll do that stupid shit where he goes, guys are doing a really good job, and everybody's bought in, and at the end of the day, we all have the same goal, and I think guys are working hard towards that. But that's his way of dancing around the question. And he told us when he got here, I don't care about stats. And he's proven that. And sometimes you just got to listen to people when they talk to you. You don't hear what you want to hear. Listen to what they're saying. And that's the difference. A lot of people, I try to explain to people the difference between hearing and listening. It's two different things. I can hear a conversation being had 15 yards away. I'm not actually listening though. Listening means you're able to take in what's being said and make sense of it and give it context, right? Analyze what's being said. That's listening. You can hear something, not actually make out what's being said, but you hear noise, right? Sometimes y'all are hearing things, but you're not listening. He told us. I'm guilty as charged. I was like, man, I hear you, EB. Nah, but are you listening though? Don't hear EB. Listen to him. He'll tell you. He's telling you. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, hey, Lou, what's up, Chris? 2 questions. Oh, and you said no consistent pass rush. I don't want to leave that out. Once you traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young, that went out the window. But even when we had them, it wasn't consistent. So yeah, that's always been. I just long for that one guy. And you know, it's funny because you always assume you gotta go and get a guy in the top 15. No, you don't. Danielle Hunter wasn't a first-round pick. Danielle Hunter wasn't a 2nd-round pick. He was a 3rd-round pick. Trey Hendrickson wasn't a 1st-round pick. He wasn't a 2nd-round pick. He was a 3rd-round pick. You don't have to draft a havoc-wreaking pass rusher in the 1st round. Max Crosby wasn't a 1st-round pick. He wasn't a 2nd-round pick. I'm not even sure if he was a 3rd-round pick. I think Max was a 4th-round pick. You can find, if you know what you're looking for and you follow the rubric, because there is a rubric that helps you with figuring out if a guy can be a dominant pass rusher or not. If you follow the rubric and you look at the production and you put the pieces of the puzzle together, obviously you got to talk to the guy, figure out if he loves ball, what does he know, et cetera, et cetera. But you can find, I just want one of those dudes. We don't need 2. Just give me one of those dudes. I just want one. I just want a TJ Watt. I want a Trey Hendrickson. I want a Danielle Hunt. I just want one of those types of guys. And if you can get one of those, it'll solve all of our pass rush problems. Because if you got a guy winning consistently on the edge like that, it's only going to bolster what the rest of the defensive line is capable of doing. And when you need it and they don't double team him, or even if they do, or they chip him, he's still going to get pressure. Chris writes, what are your thoughts on basing playoff seeding on record instead of winning the division to get home field? And second, what Commander player would have been in the Pro Bowl and why? Burgess from special teams. I saw him as the #1 guy on the Pro Bowl voting. I'm like, what? He wasn't even on special teams the first 6 weeks of the season until Reeves got injured. Like, what in the hell? Are just Commanders fans voting for that or something? I don't know. That's crazy to me. The home field, I talked about that already before. I just don't remember when and where. But I'm a big proponent of winning your division still mattering. And I do think that should ensure that you make the playoffs. And I get the purist. And most of my ideas come from a purist perspective. I don't really like change a lot in the NFL. But that's one thing I would like to see changed, because if I go 13-3 and I play or 13-4 and I play in a division with a 14-3 team, and that's why I didn't win the division, and I should still have a home playoff game. I've won 13 freaking games, and if you're telling me that because Tampa Bay plays in a lousy division, and they, or the Falcons is who I think is ultimately going to win that division. And the Falcons playing a lousy division and they end the season 9-8. They should host a playoff game because they won a division at 9-8 instead of me winning 13 games and I have to go to 9-8 Atlanta to play a playoff game. That's dumb. We can keep the seeding the way it is. You won your division. You still are the 4 seed. You're just not at home for this playoff game. That's what I think. Don't reshuffle. And honestly, that's what the seeding represents. If that matters to you, cool. If you aren't going to fight that, then you can just reshuffle it. I think seeding matters. I just don't think you should be at home in a playoff game against a team that has a better record than you. Period. But to me, seeding matters because it determines who you play, right? So I still think the division winners should still be 1 through 4. But if the 5th seed has a better record than you, then the 5th seed should be at home. They're still the 5th seed, but they're just at home because they have a better record, right? And if you win that game on the road as the 4 seed, then you go to the 1 seed, right? Which is where you should be going. If the 6 or the 7 didn't win, right? That's why seeding is important because you still have a shot against the 5 seed. Not every year is the 5 seed going to be loaded like it is this year and it was last year because Dallas was really good from a record perspective last year and they're going to be good again this year if not Philadelphia. Whoever doesn't win the NFC East is going to be in that 5 hole. So whoever it is going to win 12 or 13 games, more likely than not. Because that's what it's going to take to win the division, and whoever falls short is going to be right there. But every year isn't going to be like that. Your 5 seed every year isn't going to be 12, 13 game winner. Most years it's probably going to be a team that won 11 or 10 games, whatever. I just think winning your division should still matter, and it should still net you one of the top 4 seeds, but it shouldn't preclude you from having to go on the road if your record isn't better than the team you're playing against. If that makes any sense. As far as do we have any Pro Bowl players on the team, I don't think we do. I don't think we should be represented in the Pro Bowl this year. I can't think of one guy that I've said, despite the season we've turned in, hey, F what everybody else talking about. That dude deserves to be at the Pro Bowl. I don't see a single guy on the roster that I feel that way about this year. Not even Sam. Not even Sam. And I don't think his numbers put him there anyway. But I've seen on socials a lot of people advocating for Sam. I think he should go to the Pro Bowl. Daddy D, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Pause. I feel like I need to say that after I say that. Hey, Lou. What's up? Who are some of your potential free agents you would like us to sign this offseason? Again, that's a question I don't have the answers to because I haven't looked at the free agency list yet. I still haven't. I will at some point. I thought I would have gotten to it this week, but I've been busy doing other stuff. I haven't gotten to it this week. Maybe I'll have some downtime and I'll just take a peek, see at the free agency crop to see if there's anything that intrigues me. I remember very vividly last year knowing that tight end was going to be loaded in free agency, and it was. Linebacker was going to be loaded in free agency, and it was. And you could get you a quality offensive lineman if you needed one in free agency. Most of the guys that were worth having went back to their teams, but there were still a couple that were still available on the market. And we decided to go with Nick Gates and Andrew Wiley. That was what we decided. So I haven't looked yet, so I can't tell you what it looks like. I've heard a lot of people say the tackle market is depressed. I know the defensive end market is going to be robust, but we'll see. I'm not trying to spend that kind of money personally because, that's one of the highest paid positions. I'd rather just see we got draft picks. Take your shot. I don't know if the defensive end crop is that good in this year's draft. Only one way to find out, but I'd rather take my chances there than paying somebody big money at that position. I'd rather try to be economical, like go find you a safety in free agency. I don't know if you look for a tight end in free agency. Maybe you can find one in the draft. If you can't find one in free agency that fits your needs, maybe you get one in the draft. Linebacker is definitely something you can upgrade. It's not going to cost you a whole hell of a lot in free agency if there are any good ones available. That's the safety, linebacker, tight end. These are all positions that you can find quality players that are still young, going into the prime of their careers, that are free agents that teams just decided, I'm good. I can find another one, or I already got one on the roster. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JP writes, there's a lot of trash on this roster, but I will say that these guys like Forbes, for example, need better coaching. And that's why it's hard to call the roster trash, because I remember saying that this roster was far from complete before the season started, far from a finished product. But what we also did think was, hey, this is the best roster we've seen this team compile in the Rivera era, one, which isn't hard to do, and two, it's the best roster we've probably seen in Washington since like 2016. Who are we kidding? So we felt, really solid about this roster going into the season. And just, we didn't feel like it was coached well. And it wasn't, as it turned out. We were right. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, for as much as we talk about Rivera, we don't talk enough about how bad Mayhew is. I tried to warn y'all about him, and he was never on board with the hire. A lot of people weren't on board with Mayhew coming on board. I didn't love it, but I wasn't like wholehearted like you were, wholeheartedly against it, because at the end of the day, it still was Ronald's decision. We saw the first draft video back in 2021 when he got here, or 2022, excuse me, was the first draft that I think he had, serious input in. And he wanted the green kid from, I think it was Texas A&M, might have been Mississippi State, one of those two schools, Kenyon Green. He wanted him, right? And Ron and company were like, no, we can't take Kenyon Green, no, right? So Ron still had the final say. This past year, Mayhew was actively trying to shop our second round pick. And Rivera was the one that was adamant, no, we got to stay here. If our guy's here, his guy was Quan Martin, obviously. We got to stay here and see if our guy's here. And Martin Mayhew was kind of like, yo, I got some calls over here, man. I got some pretty enticing shit. He's like, nah, bro, I'm not interested. If our guy's here, we got to take him. So at the end of the day, I don't think Mayhew is a great, GM, talent evaluator, et cetera, et cetera. But the entire construction of the front office has been an epic fail. All of them. And to me, it's unfair to just single out Martin Mayhew. All of them haven't been good. NHZ name. Stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB mob. Y'all know what to do. Show NHZ some name, some love. Welcome them with open arms. Welcome to the squad. NHZ name. Glad to have you on board. All right. HTTC. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, so I'm watching Hard Knocks, and I saw Ron show more passion, dick riding Mike McDaniel and what they got going on. I was so pissed watching that. So I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to, but Ron knows how to show up for the cameras. Ron's no dummy. He's done Hard Knocks before. or the in-season version on Amazon Prime. He's done that before. So he knows how to put on for the cameras. Ron's a nice guy. Who are we kidding? All right. And if Ronald wants work after, life after coaching, I think there's going to be some kind of studio work for him. He's a good dude. So I don't think we've seen the last of Ronald on our televisions. Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Fat American, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, Lou, why is the game's aesthetics not as pleasing anymore? Maybe poor line play, bad tackling technique, always out of shotgun. I don't know, just looks different. The game is evolving, whether you like it or not. It's evolving. I don't like all of the changes that have been made. I don't like some of the evolution that I see, but that's the nature of the beast. That's how things happen in life. They evolve whether you like it or not. And whether you call it de-evolution or you see the game evolving, it is what it is. I think some people yearn for the physicality of yesteryear. That's gone. That's never coming back. And we know why it's not coming back. And I get it. Football is a physical sport. You cannot legislate the physicality out of it, but they're trying. They're trying. And it does change the way aesthetically that it looks. But we also don't want to see people getting hurt. Did y'all hear about Hayden Hurst? Like, that's the type of shit that's scary. So, again, it looks different, but it's going to be different. And it's never going back to the way that it once was. And yes, the gun runs are nauseating, especially in short yardage situations, third and fourth down. I can't stand it, but that's literally what, like I said, 85 to 90% of the league is doing in these short yardage situations. They're coming out of the gun. Jarris's Corner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, would you mind Lovie Smith as DC? I wouldn't. I don't think I would be on board with Lovie Smith as my defensive coordinator. It's been a long time since I've seen a Lovie Smith coached defense. He's been a head coach for so long now. I don't even think Lovie would even entertain the thought of being somebody's DC at this point. I mean, I'm trying to think, did he ever have a stint as anybody's DC after being fired from Chicago? I think he went from Chicago to Tampa, from Tampa to Illinois, from Illinois to Houston. I don't think he's ever been a coordinator again. And normally, when you've been a head coach for that long, there's no going back. Unless you love it that much, there's no going back. Rex Ryan could have, I think he, at this point, he just wants back in the NFL. I think he'd take anybody's defensive coordinator. Nobody's trying to hire him, though. He's a loudmouth. He doesn't know what to say out of his mouth. You just don't need that kind of a distraction, right? But at this point, I think Rex would take a coordinator job in a heartbeat. But most guys, when they've been a head coach for that long, they ain't looking to get into the coordinator game. Rel Goated, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rel writes, CJ Gardner Johnson as an offseason pickup, big culture guy and a dog. He did sign a 1-year deal in Detroit. He'd be interesting, and I don't know how much it would cost you. I know he's coming off a season where I know he's dealt with some injuries, but when healthy, he's been super productive. He talks a lot of shit, but he also backs it up. I don't know how old he is. And I would assume he's looking to get paid wherever he goes. Because last year he left the Eagles, based off of principle. Probably was the wrong decision. He probably would have gotten, more guaranteed long-term money. It might not have been the amount he was looking for. But he probably thought he was going to hit the market and get something comparable or more than what the Eagles offered him. And he ended up having to take a 1-year prove-it deal. I think this next deal that he signs and coming off the season that he's coming off of with the injuries and whatnot, might not be able to get that long-term contract. And he may have screwed himself into a situation where he's got to take a bunch of one-year deals essentially. But he's interesting. He's interesting. I wouldn't dismiss that. Juan Gotti talking sports. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? Bring Bobby home. Turn Sam into an MVP candidate. He's talking about Bobby Slowick, who was here when Kyle was here. What's new? When the Shanahans were here, everybody was here. We were popping in those days. It's funny because I could see it, and I think some of you could see it in those days, but there were a lot of people chanting nepotism back in those days, which I was like, you idiot. I felt like Ren, right? You stupid idiot. Like, you dummies. You really think Kyle Shanahan is here because of nepotism? This dude can flat out coach, and the rest of those coaches on that staff clearly could coach as well. But I digress. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy JP writes, draft an offensive tackle at 4 or 5, then trade our 2 second rounders for another first rounder and draft a DN or Bowers if he's still there. Here's the thing, and I don't necessarily disagree with trying to get as many blue chippers as you can. We probably at this point need more, not less. Like, make the most of your picks where they are. And I'm not saying you can't trade back one of those second rounders and pick up more picks if you so desire, if the value for you isn't there at, say, let's say Washington ends up with a better draft position than the Bears. And so Washington's pick in the second round is 37 and the Bears pick is 40, right? You might look at 37 and say, hey, this guy's a stud. We got to take him. But then you get to 40 and you're like, I don't really like the value here. And somebody's offering us an opportunity to move back 8 spots and pick up a 4th round pick in the process. I wouldn't be opposed to doing that. Or moving all the way back to 54, picking up a 3rd and a 5th, in the process of doing that, right? Again, I wouldn't be opposed to doing those things, but I wouldn't be opposed to them packaging up picks to go and get a guy either, But I think we're in the position where we need more, not less. More, not less. But I wouldn't be opposed to it. DJ23. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, so Jack's defense is hard to learn, easy to exploit. Lou, are you going to take out the highest of highs? I haven't seen any. LOL. I actually said after one of my videos intros, I said, when's the last time we seen those? I think they only give us the lowest of lows. Or the bluest of blues. I don't know if we've ever seen the highest of highs. Our highest of highs of recent note are when we go on these frivolous 4-game, win streaks or whatever, and think we have a shot at the playoffs. That's been our highest of highs. The Indy game last year was a pretty high. We should have lost that game. And we don't snatch victory from the jaws of defeat very often. I think we found out after that game that was the first time we had won when we were trailing by more than 2 scores with under 5 minutes to go in a game. And we were 2-78 in those situations over the last decade or whatever. It was crazy. The number was crazy. That was a fun one. But yes, to your point, we haven't had the highest of highs. If we get a name change, I'll have to change it again, more likely than not. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Fat American writes, why are gun runs less expensive, effective? Yeah, wait a minute. What are we doing here? What do we? Oh, he says, sorry for the typo. Okay. All right. I'm going to try to make sense of it. Give me a second. Why are gun runs less explosive but effective? Or, I don't know. Let's just say less effective. Why are gun runs less effective? And why aren't they seen as power runs? What's the difference between a gun run and an under center run? So the biggest issue with a gun run is you limit where the back can go. So what do I mean by that? If the back is lined up offset to the quarterback's left, or the running back is lined up right next to the quarterback and gun to his right. If he's at the quarterback's right, he can't take the handoff because he's got to go get the ball from the quarterback, right? He can't then take that ball and in one fluid motion run to his right. He's got to go to his left to get the ball and then stop, turn, pivot, and go back to his right. So you're essentially taking away one half of the field. Either he's got to run straight or he's got to go to his left when he gets this carry. Like a lot of our gun runs are like outside zone. So, Sam will get the ball and he'll turn sideways and B-Rob will come and take the ball from him as he's running to his left, right? Or to his left, okay? And he can't then stop, turn, and go back to his right. I mean, he could. It'd be like Chris Rodriguez did it in the game against Miami, but that was like a counter. So he intentionally got the ball, stopped, turned, and pivoted and went back in the opposite direction to allow the blockers to pull around, right? But you don't have a three-way go when you're in gun. You have a two-way go. Straight or continuing on in the direction where you take the handoff. You can't go in the other way. Whereas if you're under center, you can go left, you can go right, you can go straight up the middle. I can go boot off of that. Like there's so many things you can do. The play action fake is more prevalent and it's more effective under center. Like the possibilities are endless. Now there's some things you can do out of gun that aren't as effective, like read option or RPOs. Those are obviously way more effective and they're impossible to do under center versus the gun. But and that's why situationally you just have to make it like, I think the gun is awesome in the red zone, just not on 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, or where I feel like having your quarterback under center gives you more options. It gives the defense more to think about. As a defense, I don't care if you run it out of the gun. I'm not afraid of that. If you get it, okay, you got it, but I'm not afraid of that. And I'm not going to respect play action out of the gun. I definitely don't respect that. That's something I think Sam can do better at, is his gun runs, fakes. I think he can put a little bit more into his fakes, personally. Mr. Breeze 68. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, what do you think happens with Jason Wright? I think he gets fired. I think they are literally going to clean house. I do. Not that any of us should really care what happens to Jason Wright, but I think he gets fired. I wouldn't be shocked if he's back. But I think they're gonna start anew. Football side and the business side. I think they're gonna he's gonna get some guys in there that he handpicks. But we'll see. We'll see. Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Fat American writes, sorry for all the typos, my phone tripping. It's all good. It's all good, bro. It happens to the best of us. Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Fat American writes, you get what I mean about the aesthetics, right? Like fundamentals just seem bad now. Before it seemed like a pro sport. Now there's a lot of talent, but it's played like backyard football, a bit sloppier. And I think some of that comes from a lot of the adjustments that have been made to the CBA to benefit the players. The players have opted for less padded practices, less time on task in terms of practice time. You remember you used to have 2-a-days, and there didn't used to be this mandate on how many padded practices you can have. So I do think the fundamentals have taken a bit of a step back because you don't tackle as much as you used to. And I've advocated for more time for guys to get better at their craft. I think we live in a day and age, and I've said this many times, where people want instant gratification. And if you're not good right now, then you suck and you're a bust. And how is somebody supposed to get better when, if they struggle early on, you just write them off and say they suck? I just think it's tough with the rule changes and them trying to make the game safer, the players trying to advocate for less wear and tear on their bodies. I do think it's made for a less fundamentally sound game, but that's just a byproduct of the players having a little bit more power. And I don't blame them for advocating for less contact. They get enough of it on Sundays. So, but I think it does play a part in the fundamentals or lack thereof. Jado, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, "What up, Lou? What up, Jay? I hope the new staff believes in Sam." We'll see. It's crazy because a lot of people keep referencing these final 4 games of the season, and I'm like, if you haven't seen enough from Sam by now to, like, if you're on the fence, okay. But these final 4 games are going to be awful, and they're against quality defenses, and the team is quick. So this isn't a great representation of Sam, I don't think, at least. But that's not to say that he can't go out here and do some really good things. But I don't like the situation the way it's set up down the stretch. We'll see. Reading that article that John Keim wrote with Jeremy Fowler that I referenced earlier in the show, it talked about the belief that the staff and the organization as a whole has in Sam, and what the word is in the building. But again, a lot of the guys that are saying these things aren't going to be here next year. And Josh Harris doesn't strike me as the type of owner that's going to force Sam Howell in the next group, nor should he. So we'll see what happens. Abel Ambrosio, been a member for 13 months, who writes, "Off topic, Soto traded to the New York Yankees. Thoughts?" They could use his bat. He's a damn good baseball player. It didn't work in San Diego. That was probably one of the bigger disappointments of the baseball season last year, was the Padres. A lot of people had high hopes for them. But the Yankees are always going to try. The Red Sox are always going to try. The Dodgers are always going to try. They're never going to stop trying to be the best, because the standard is set for those types of organizations. It's World Series or bust for teams like that. So it's an arms race every year. And, anytime the Yankees struggle the way that they did last year, they're going to go out and make something big happen. And this counts as that. Fat American, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Fat American writes, "Even pass plays, a lot more underthrown passes, less passes hit receivers in stride, a lot more contested throws, etc. Just less clean overall." But that also speaks to, better defensive play too. You got to give credit. The defensive athletes are just greater than they were 10, 15 years ago. Guys are freaks now. And as far as like contested catches and things of that nature, that's by design. You see a lot more back shoulder fades and things of that nature. That didn't exist 15, 20 years ago. Guys weren't throwing back shoulder fades. Hey, you run straight and then just turn outside and I'm going to throw it to you. That didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. the formations. I mean, think about it this way. How many teams went empty 12 years ago? That was rare to see an empty set. You see empty every week 50 million times a game. It's just a different game. It's just a different game. And as far as the passing is concerned, college football, I think, is the reason for that. You don't see as many one, pro style offenses in college, but two, college is really based off of trying to win, at the collegiate level. And so you do whatever you got to do. And the offenses are different in college. The receivers are way more wide open in college. And I think you just see a lot less guys playing in NFL style environments. And so there's a transition. Unless you adapt and adjust to what that guy does coming into the league, there's a learning curve of taking that step from collegiate quarterback to NFL quarterback. So I think there's a lot of factors, though. A lot of factors. Top tier dips. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Top tier dips writes, hey, Lou, if we have the third or fourth pick in the draft, would you be opposed to trading back for more picks? How far back we talking? That's always my thing. When you're that high and you got a chance to get a legit blue chipper, you got to weigh the pros and cons of moving back. The first question I have anytime somebody brings, how far are we moving back? Because if we moving back 3 spots, 2 spots, damn right, I'm open to moving back. All right? I'm still going to get me a damn good football player moving back 2 spots. And again, remember, anytime you find yourself in a position like this, if you got the third pick overall, then you make a list of 3 players. One of the 3 is going to be there. If you have the fourth pick, you make a list of 4 players. If you trade back to the 7th pick overall, you take your list and then you expand it to 7 and you say, are we okay? Which is what Ronald and company did back in 2022. They were at 11. They traded back to 16, I believe it was. And they asked themselves, are we okay with passing up the opportunity to get X, Y, and Z? And are we okay with the list of players that we've written down that are, one of these guys is going to be here? Are we okay with this list? If we're not, then we need to make the selection at 11, Chris Olave. If we're cool with trading back and potentially missing out on Kyle Hamilton, missing out on Olave, because you trading back means you know that the Saints are coming up to get Olave, and you're cool with missing out on him. You got to be okay with that. So you got to ask yourself, are you okay with missing out on the best tackle prospect in the draft? Are you okay if you're 3rd overall? Are you okay passing up on an opportunity to draft Drake May or Jalen Daniels? That's what you got to ask yourself. If the answer is yes, I'm good. I feel really good about the player I can get at 6 or 7. Yeah, hell yeah, because you're going to get a lot in return just moving back 4 or 5 spots, let alone if you move. Now, you got me moving back to 13. Yeah, wait a minute. Now, this is what when you're as bad as we are right now, you have to get something that justifies you being that bad. That's the only reason why 2019 was okay, because in my mind, I told myself, I'm getting a generational pass rusher out of the mix here in Chase Young. So 2019 wasn't in vain. And then when he turned out to not be a generational pass rusher, 2019 literally was the worst, because I didn't get shit out of 2019. Nothing. Other than Terry McLaurin. I didn't need us to be trash to spend a 3rd round pick on Terry McLaurin. We could have been Super Bowl runner-up and still gotten Terry in the 3rd round. You didn't need to be the 2nd worst team in the league to get Terry in the 3rd round where we got him. You needed to get Chase Young, and he needed to be playing like Micah Parsons, or he needed to be playing like TJ Watt or Myles Garrett, and he's not. So you suck the way we're sucking right now, you better be damn sure about what you're doing, because you need to come away with something elite. That's part of the reason why you're drafting where you're drafting at right now. You don't have enough of those types of players. Gearcell 1, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Gearcell 1, thank you for being a member of the MOBB rights. Bring back the petty bone with the lefty swirl. Just saw Forbes in a white polyester suit with knee-high Nike boots at Wendy's. Not at Wendy's, though. Tragic. Not at Wendy's, though. I wasn't a Wendy's guy back in the day until one of my best friends back in the day exposed me to Wendy's. And Wendy's had some good shit when I was, when I wasn't a vegan. And I hit up Wendy's, like those fresh cut fries, like people was sleeping on Wendy's fries, man. Them shits was banging. Their nuggets tasted a little different, and their sweet and sour sauce was the worst of any of the fast food chains. Like, I'm like, this shit ain't sweet and sour sauce. I don't know what this shit is. I didn't even like the color of it. I don't know what this shit is, but it's not delicious. Don't get caught at Wendy's with a white polyester suit on and knee-high Nike boots on. That's just a word of advice from me to you. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of Commanders Nightly News. I thank you guys for joining me. This was a fun show. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow. We will be live for Thursday Night Football. I know. But we'll be live after the Cowboys and Eagles, and that'll be a lot of fun on Sunday night, right? For those of you who are interested, I think I'm going to go live on Friday afternoon and unveil my Christmas playlist to you guys, I think. I'll keep you posted on that. If it's not Friday, it'll definitely be sometime next week because we got to get it out now. We're into December, and I'm ready to bust out. We're putting the Christmas tree up tomorrow. We were supposed to put it up this past weekend. Too much was going on. But we're putting it up tomorrow night, and I'm busting out the Christmas jams from here on out. It's on. So I look forward to doing that with you guys. Anyway, I digress. You guys get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Appreciate you for showing up and holding the kid down. And as always, y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. Until next time, you guys, take care. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20.